Hello and welcome to Raising Those Spirits. I'm Steve,
I'm Sam.
and this week we are going to welcome you to Camp Goosebumps.
Ooh, I've got goosebumps already just
Yeah,
thinking about it.
I am dropping the topic in the beginning of the thing. It only took 7 episodes.
No, I mean it makes sense. It's not like it's a spoiler for the people who are listening because they would have clicked on this and seen the title.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's just weird that we always make them wait 20 minutes before we get to what the topic is.
Yeah, it's true. No, we don't need to be coy. You all know. Everybody listening knows. We don't need
So
to be coy.
we'll get to the meat of it later, but what we mean by Welcome to Camp Goosebumps is we've been doing our summer theme because it's now officially summer.
Hmm.
So we wanted to do a summer camp episode. But then, I was going through all my Goosebumps books because I've been collecting them all because I have a kid now. And I was like,
Hmm.
there are at least four Goosebumps books just about camp, like that I could think of off the top of my head. Let's do some Goosebumps camp. Maybe we'll get to other camp things later. I think there's a lot of really good camp horror, but not always directed at children. So,
Yeah, I never went to camp as a kid. Like, I never
oh,
did overnight camp. I did like day camps, which were really just like, I think it was like school. My mom was a teacher. She was a teacher, so she's retired now. So she would do these day camps in Hoboken, where I'm from, way way back. Um, but I never did like an overnight like summer camp in the woods camping camp. In
oh,
camped. I've never like regular camped.
did you like Boy Scout camp or anything?
Nope, no camp. Never camp. I've never spent a night in the woods in a tent.
Oh my God, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like, are not I'm not judging you. Just my dad was an army ranger, and my dad was also the local scoutmaster. And I have a lot of older brothers. And so even before I was qualified to be going on these things, I was going just because my family was there and there was no one to watch me, so I was there. But
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
go ahead.
my wife keeps wanting to go camping, and I'm like, why am I going to pretend to not have a house? I have an apartment. I have an apartment with walls and a ceiling, and it's warm and safe, and there's no bears.
Meanwhile, my wife is like, hey, we've got 3 wooded acres. Let's just go out back and pitch a tent and just camp in our own backyard. And I'm like, we've got a 1 year old, maybe in like 2 or 3 years. But
Yeah.
yeah, no,
And you know what? Just like get a little bassinet, put in the tent with you.
I went camping at least one weekend a month, every month, summer, winter, fall, or spring, my entire life. Like some of my earliest memories are childhood, but like from the age of 8 on, I think, I went camping literally at least once a month, including again like freezing temperatures. I've been camping, I think, in -20 degree weather.
No, thank you.
Yeah. And that's in a tent. That's not in a cabin. That is tent camping. It was at least -12. I have a certificate somewhere still that says I did it because it's insane. And I kept it because people don't believe it.
Who printed a certificate for this? Did
Boy
you, was there like
Scouts.
a camp? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so every weekend I went camping, and every summer my parents sent me away to sleepaway survivalist camp up in upstate New York in the Adirondack Mountains for a few weeks. And there was no electricity, there was no running water. You were living in the woods with what you brought, and you learned to survive.
I did soccer camp for like 2 weeks one summer, and it was really hot,
Wow.
but
Yeah.
I got to play a lot of soccer, so that was cool.
I mean, that ties into my book because they're at a sports camp in my book. And I would also go to Boy Scout
Ah,
camp. I'd get back from survivalist camp, literally wash my clothes, get put back in the car, go back to a different part of upstate New York, and go to Boy Scout camp for another week. So I spent a ton of time at camp. just
Can't relate.
way
I
too
have nothing. I
much.
have nothing to say to you. That's
I
ridiculous.
think it's hilarious
I don't
because
understand I don't understand the appeal.
again, we'll get to this later, but I remember loving the book you read growing up because it was very relatable to me. And I remember hating the book that I read growing up because they were just at sports camp. And I feel like we read each other's books for this.
I don't remember if I ever read Camp Jelly Jam. I definitely read. We're getting it. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I guess that's okay. It's our show. We can do what we want. My book, Welcome to Camp Nightmare. I got halfway through it and I was like, "Wow, I must have missed this one as a kid." And then I was like, "No, wait, I did read this." And I realized that I had read it, and I was like, "What was this book?" I think we're gonna have to talk a lot about just I don't know, the space Goosebumps in general occupies in my brain,
Yes.
because I'm trying to like remap my understanding of Goosebumps. I don't know that anything I just said makes any kind of sense, but
No,
hopefully it will by the end of this episode.
it does because as we've talked about before, I take notes on everything that I
I
want
took
to talk
so
about.
many notes this
Oh
week.
my god, I'm so proud
I
of you.
did you proud this week. I took so many notes.
I almost didn't take notes this week because I had a personal emergency this week and almost didn't even have time to read the book, and I literally sat down and plowed through it in like 2 hours yesterday and was just like I don't have time for notes, but I did manage to scrape some notes together. But my notes have a section of what I remembered happening and then what actually happened. So it's like also that weird space that Goosebumps lives in my brain where I was just like, isn't this the one where blah blah blah? And then like I read it and I was like, here's what actually happened. I hit the basic beats, but I also got a lot wrong. So yeah, we can talk about that later. I'd love to talk about that later.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So let's power through our opening so we can really dive into these books because I think we're both very excited to talk
It's
about Goosebumps.
funny because I did not like this book, but now that I'm talking to you, I just want to talk about it. Like
No, that's good content. I mean, that's what we're here for, right? That's what the audience is here for. Tell them, people.
okay, well,
They're cheering for you, Steve.
yeah. This book was bad, and R.L. Stein should feel bad. No, I'll probably cut that because we want him on the show one day.
I would
Uh,
love for him to come onto the show, so we're not going to say anything bad about R.L. Stein.
no, like, the thing is, I even wrote in my notes, this isn't a poorly written book. This is a fine book. Like, it's just that I didn't enjoy it. So, like, we'll get to that. That's my own personal issues. That has nothing to do with R.L.
Yeah, we'll get to
Stein.
it. We're gonna
It's
we're gonna dissect this. We're gonna
yeah.
dissect this.
All right. Well, aside from reading this book, what have you been doing this week, Sam?
Steve, my wife, our daughter, and two of our friends and their son, who's I think a little older than your son. We took a ride out again to one of these conservation areas that we got all around Massachusetts. It's this old farm, Appleton Farms. I forget what town it is, but it was this. Oh, it was in Ipswich, Appleton Farm in Ipswich. This old farm from the 1600s or something like that, and now it's all this like wooded hiking trails. And we went on a long walk, and at one point, I got myself into what was quite obviously the beginning of a horror movie, and I'm super glad my family was not attacked by a serial killer. So we're walking through the woods, and in real life, this was pretty. This is mid morning. This is probably about 11 o'clock. But I'm going to invite our audience to pretend that it was deep into the midnight so that it's spookier. But in real life, it was beautifully sunny, and it was a gorgeous day. We take a wrong turn. Life lesson: even if you're going on a short hike, get a map. Just have a copy of the map on your phone, people. It's ridiculous that we got lost in a relatively well populated area, but we definitely got lost in the woods at one point. And we started backtracking because we're like, we're hot, the kids are tired. We just want to get back to the main farm so we can get ourselves something to drink, get some water, and cool down. We start backtracking, and we're like, oh, let's take this other trail. We get part of the way down that trail, and we find that it's flooded because we've had a ton of rain. We backtrack again and we get to another fork in the road, and it's like, okay, we have to determine what's faster. Trying this one path that we haven't gone on yet and forging ahead and seeing if that takes us back to the farm. Or do we just go back the way that we came, even though we know that that might be a bit longer? You know, we've been out hiking we're a couple of miles in at this point. So my lovely wife says, I'll go scout out ahead. Again, horror movie scenario, big mistake. She starts walking out like on one of these paths, but I can see her. It's a pretty big open field. And my daughter goes and follows her because she wants to follow mommy. Of course, she's 4. Kids 4-year-olds are like that. And I can see they're just about like to this one bend in the path. And my wife calls me. She's like, all right, I can't quite see where this is going, but I can go ahead a little further and get a better sense of this is going to take us back to the farm. I was like, okay, but stay on the line because horror movie scenario. She gets around the bend. She's probably about 100 yards away from me. She gets around the bend, her and my daughter. And as soon as they're out of eye line, I hear my daughter scream. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is a werewolf. I'm never going to see my wife and child again. So I swallow I take a deep breath and I swallow. And then I hear from the phone. It was a bug. A bug had landed on my daughter's arm. And she was like, it tickled me. I was so scared. And then they come back and we just decide to go back the way that we came and everything was fine. But for a moment there, I was absolutely at the beginning of a horror movie scenario. Again, perfectly themed for this week because we were on a long hike in the woods. But she was like, the bugs scared me. I'm like, it's okay, sweetie. And I carried her most of the way back. And that's my spooky story for this week. I invite you to believe that this happened in the dead of night. I invite you to believe that the bug was enormous, a monstrous bug. But in real life, I think it was probably a fly.
It was a ladybug.
That's my. Yeah, it was something. I mean, like, she's usually not afraid of bugs. Like, she's really super into bugs. So the fact that it really scared her, like, I don't know what it was. But my wife said that it was quite a small bug.
I earlier today, tying into this, we got back, we had dinner. My son, we did his bedtime routine downstairs. My wife went to bring him upstairs to put him to bed. And my wife brings my son upstairs, put him to bed, and suddenly I hear, literally like a minute after she's been up there, tops, oh my God! And then what sounds just like slamming and crashing. And I'm like up the stairs, like two at a time, running up, leaping over the baby gate. And I run in, and she's like, "It's okay." And I'm like, "Okay, what's going on here? What happened?" And she goes, "Oh, I put him down on his changing table, and a bug ran out from under it. So I was trying to stomp it." And I was just like, it literally sounded like a struggle from downstairs. Like, it
Bugs are
was,
gross.
yeah. No, I agree. She said it was like a silverfish, which, like, ugh, what
Ugh,
was it even doing in there?
that's the
But
worst.
yeah, and I get wanting it to not be in your baby's room near his crib, but still, from downstairs, you would have thought she was fighting a werewolf. So, I mean, that's a good way to spend your week. We went for a long hike in the woods, and we took a trail that we've taken before, but it looks like during COVID, it has been the less used trail because there's a few trails from that entry point. And so
Mm-hmm.
it is incredibly overgrown now. And it had a definite serial killer vibe. We went like early in the morning. We live in like a valley up by the mountains, and it was like very misty and the thick vegetation. And I was just like, this trail's never felt like I was going to get murdered before. But every single time On the rare occasions we did pass someone on the trail, it would like be like full back up, like, is this the guy? Is this the guy who's gonna kill us? So I don't know what it was, but that day it had a really, really serial killery vibe to the trail.
You don't know who the person is who's going to try and kill you until they try and kill you,
Right?
Steve.
You gotta be ready.
Yeah.
When you've got that feeling, you just prepare.
Yeah.
So I've had a less spooky week aside from, chiming in on the bug.
Bug attacks.
But I've been doing a lot of landscaping working on the property, and wood lumber prices are still astronomically high. So haven't been able to
Mm-hmm.
do a lot with wood. So I've been doing more stuff with metal. So we bought some wrought iron arches to put over the pathways that I've been building around the property.
Ooh.
I built a triple wide one because if you go down to the back of our property, there's one of those old New England stone walls, and it leads down to an old colonial bridge that goes over a brook that goes through our property. And on along that row, I planted a ton of big blueberry bushes, but there was this like 10-foot wide gap that there was nothing. So I built a big metal archway for people to walk under to go down that way. And I did it again up in the front of our house because I built a big front stone patio that's like overgrown and kind of has a more rustic, woodsy feel. And I got some viney plants that do like dark purple flowers and stuff, and I planted them up along the arches, and they've already started to overtake them. They're taking, because we've had so much rain, they've just been like growing and growing and growing. So I already have like that cast iron arch with like the vines growing up through them kind of aesthetic going that gives that nice spooky feel. So that's very satisfying.
I like that.
Also,
That sounds neat.
I know you don't like birds, but
I don't.
they, especially the one down by the water, there is always at least like three birds on it. And occasionally we get like spooky birds. So the day that happens, it'll definitely up the spooky factor. Having like three crows just standing there,
Yeah, I got those trained crows we've been talking about.
you gotta. Honestly, that would be a godsend because the guy who used to own our house left like every once in a while I'll just find like shiny metal. I'll see something shiny and there'll just be like a random metal bit in the grass, and I'm like, what is this? Like, and if they could just start clearing all the shinies out of my yard so my son doesn't fall and cut himself, I would love it.
Here's what you do. This is my Saturday morning cartoon idea. Get a big magnet.
I
Just run the magnet over your yard and get all the metal stuff out.
I did buy a metal detector. I've been walking around.
Halfway there.
Yeah, halfway there. So,
What spirit are you raising this week, Steve? Tell me about the spirit that you're raising.
as we've discussed, I spent a lot of time away at camp. And when you're at camp, especially like camp where like you're like living on the trail for part of it. So like we would like there was like the main camp where we would do all of our not merit badges because it's not Boy Scouts for the most part, but they had like their own achievement type of badges and stuff. So where you took a lot of
Hmm.
your classes, but then they would also like I've done most of the trails in the Adirondacks because you do like 2, 3, 4 day hikes on different trails, different mountains, and when you're
Sounds horrible.
yeah. Yeah, being 9 years old and having like a 50-pound pack that you're toting up and down a mountain is awful. Because when you're nine
Ugh.
years old, you weigh like 50 pounds. But anyway, you got to drink a lot of what they called bug juice, which was basically just Kool-Aid. Um, and you really only ever got grape or fruit punch. But at the end of a long day, it was nice. You'd make a big thing of it, and you'd all just basically chug it because it was the middle of the freaking summer, and you needed to
Sounds like
rehydrate.
child abuse to me. Sounds like child abuse.
But anyway, I loved bug juice. Bug juice was one of the best parts. So every once in a while you wouldn't get bug juice, you'd get like lemonade, and I would just be like, "What is this crap?" But in the vein
Get
of
out of here, country time.
yeah, basically. Um, And I love, I mean, I all summer long I have country time in my fridge. I love it, but it's just something about being on the trail where I was like, no, I want some bug juice. And bug juice is basically off-brand Kool-Aid. So for my cocktail today, I am doing. I found a site that does adult Kool-Aid cocktails, and a lot of them look amazing.
Oh
But
yeah.
what I
I
did
did I did the voice.
was tropical punch rum. So
That sounds great.
yeah, this recipe is really straightforward. You make up the full gallon of ice cold tropical punch, then you mix in a liter of rum and you put it on ice. And it's basically a hurricane cocktail. Like it's that fruit punchy, rummy, alcoholic, very simple rip off of a hurricane. It's very good. It's very tasty. And if you don't want to make that much, you can make the full gallon for the kids. Pour yourself a glass and, pour a shot or two into yours. Put some ice in, and it is annoyingly refreshing. Um,
Annoyingly refreshing.
if you want to get extra fancy and actually turn it into like a cocktail, you could throw a fresh cherry or an orange wedge or something in there. I actually was at the food store the other day and I found not grenadine, it is literally maraschino cherry juice for your cocktails. And I was
That's not grenadine. I thought that's just what grenadine
grenadine
was.
is pomegranate.
Oh,
Yeah, I always thought it was basically the same, but it turns out it's not, and now I own both. So that is my
huh.
drink. It is tropical punch and rum. I chose that one because I'm definitely a rum guy, especially in the summer. Grape was always my more favorite bug juice flavor, but their thing was grape and vodka. I'm not a big vodka guy. Although I do like flavored vodkas, I have been drinking a
Mm,
lot on my own. There is a brand called Firefly.
sounded so sad.
I mean, it's not sad. There's a brand of vodka called Firefly, and it's iced tea flavored vodka. And I think it's delicious. I like to pour it into my sweet tea, but I've also recently just been pouring it into the country time and doing like a fake alcoholic Arnold Palmer.
Which leads into my drink, which
Yeah.
was a real alcoholic Arnold Palmer.
Okay, how do you make a real alcoholic Arnold Palmer? And is it just called alcoholic Arnold Palmer? And does he take
No,
offense to that?
according to the internet, it's called a John Daly, who is apparently another golfer. I'm gonna let you in on a secret. I don't know anything about golf.
Yeah,
Literally nothing.
I was calling my concoction the Happy Gilmore because like if you're gonna have an alcoholic, you know, Tom Collins, not Tom Collins. Oh my God,
Arnold Palmer.
Arnold Palmer. Keep doing your drink.
Oh, Happy Gilmore is a much better name. Anyway, no, so this is a so it's basically an Arnold Palmer, which for those of you not in the know, that's half lemonade, half iced tea, which was apparently the favorite drink of Arnold Palmer the golfer, who I think is alive. I do not believe he is dead.
I believe he is
But I'd
still
have to look it
alive.
up. He's still alive. I don't know. Anyway, it's that plus vodka. Shockingly, I loved it. So what I did was I took just a regular pint glass, I filled it with ice. I grabbed my jug of Tito's. I did about probably 2, 3 fingers worth of vodka. That's a lie. It was at least 4 fingers. By the way, I'm drinking it right now. I feel good. Just had a just a bottle of Arizona Arnold Palmer that my wife picked up at the convenience store last night. I mixed those together and feeling pretty good. Keep topping it off with more of the non-alcoholic Arnold Palmer as to cool myself down. But shockingly, it's delicious. It's a nice little drink. Got myself a little plastic bendy straw in there. I'm
I
doing good.
I mean, that sounds very nice. I like my concoction, but it's not a true Arnold Palmer. It is just a shot or two of, lemonade vodka in. So it's, you get the idea, but yours sounds like it'll probably be a little tastier. But mine's easy, so
Now, here's the thing about Arizona iced tea.
it's
It's
easy.
delicious. It's
And
mass produced. It was good to start with, and then I just added a high quality vodka.
Yeah. No, awesome. I want to do a side by side comparison.
Sure.
Why not?
You know what we should do? We should make a recipe book of all the cocktail. Have I talked about this on the
You
show
talked about
before?
this
We should make.
literally last week.
I haven't. Shoot,
No, that just means it's a good idea. If it keeps
it is a
if it
good
keeps
idea.
coming back around, it's a good idea.
All right, coming 2023, we're gonna actually put out. Once we have enough episodes, we're gonna put out the Raising Spirits cocktail, our recipe book.
I mean, we're on episode 7. That's 2 drinks an episode. We're already at 14 drinks.
14 drinks. Oh my goodness,
Yeah,
we're doing great.
we are. We're doing fantastic.
Nice.
We even
Well, I'm in the
invented one.
mood. We did.
All right.
I'm
So,
in the mood. I'm in the mood to talk about some Goosebump books right
yeah.
now.
Do you want to go first or
Sure, chronologically, my book came out first.
that is true.
All right. The first camp Goosebump book, Welcome to Camp Nightmare. It came out in 1990 something or other. Again, I took notes, but my notes weren't that good. I don't have a physical copy of the book. I got it out of a digital library. Welcome to Camp Nightmare concerns Billy. Billy is getting dropped off at summer camp, and the summer camp may not be what it seems, Steve. I don't know if you know this, but one of the things about Goosebump books is they're full of twists and turns. In fact, I would say that literally every chapter ended on not only a cliffhanger, but a twist. Literally every chapter of this book ends on a twist. And I don't know if that's true in your book, but I suspect it's still
Yeah.
both of these books have a lot of twists.
Every single chapter ended on a cliffhanger, and it was like that stupid going to commercial cliffhanger from like the 90s and the 80s cartoons where then like you'd come back and they'd be like, "What was that noise?" "Oh, it's just Derek the dog making a Slurpee." Like it was
It's the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to give a quick synopsis of the book. Basically, as Billy is going about his camp activities, he begins to suspect that the adults are trying to pull something over on him, but they're just constantly throwing out different like spooky things that are happening at the camp. Like, there might be a monster named Saber. Also, there's a forbidden bunk. Also, don't ask about all the kids who are disappearing. Every one by one, all of the kids he knows disappears and are either replaced by other kids or like they tell him like, "Oh no, there was never a kid named Mike here. Mike was never here."
this. I don't want to interrupt you, but this is so similar to my book, and I think that's why I didn't like it as a kid. I was just like, didn't I already read
I was
this?
like, right. So, I mean, the whole thing culminates, spoiler warning for a book that we all read 20 some odd years ago.
Came out in
It's all a test.
1993.
93. Oh my God. So, not 20 years ago, 27 years ago?
28
28
years
years
ago
ago?
this month.
This book is like 30 years old? Oh no. That makes me feel awful inside. Oh, I need a minute to kind of comprehend that. Okay, so this almost 30-year-old children's novel. What does it turn out to be? The whole thing is a test. I had a couple of different theories, and then I like, oh wait, no, I read this as a kid. I don't need to have theories about what's happening in this book. I can just try and remember. Because at one thought I was like, oh, is this like a battle royale situation where the kids are going to need to fight each other to death? Is this a test? And it was a test. It all turns out that there are, in fact, oh, how do I even explain the ending of this book?
Aren't
I know
they
I just breezed
aliens
through.
getting ready
There are
for an
aliens.
expedition to Earth?
That's what it is. They're aliens getting ready for an expedition to Earth. And this is a test to make sure that he's ready to go to Earth because on Earth, they don't know what to expect. So they're trying to throw as much random stuff at this kid to see if he's ready for exploring Earth. And that is so. What?
I
Why? That makes no sense.
I as a child remember I remember loving this book, especially since I went to a similar kind of sleepaway camp, not where they were like Truman showing you, obviously, but
That's exactly what I said. Like this is all a Truman Show.
yeah.
That was
But
in my notes.
I really enjoyed it because I could like envision everything because that was what I did in the summers. And then it got to the aliens twist, and I was like, this is bullshit. Like
It's such bull.
it was like 10-year-old me having their first like what the hell moment. Did you ever see or read Misery by Stephen King?
I watched the movie. I have not read the book.
Do you remember her rant about how it can't just be like a fake fix because he has to fix his book series for her, and she tells the story
Right.
about how like she's like the car went over the cliff. You can't just make it so he didn't go over the cliff. Like this was kind of like my first experience like that as a kid, being like, no, that's bull. This is a crap ending. What?
I
Like
was reading in the Q&A. There's a Q&A in the copy of the book of that I read, and the question was, readers are certainly surprised by the twist ending of Welcome to Camp Nightmare. How did you ever think of it? And R.L. Stein says, you know what? I always think of the surprise ending first. I want to be like, RL, you need to you need to be straight with people. It's very obvious that you thought of the ending first because the ending doesn't match what's happening in this story at all.
at all. It's there's no indication up to that point because some things you can like go back and rewatch, reread, whatever, and be like, oh man, there's actually like a few little no such thing in these books.
No, oh man, R.L. Stein's not going to come on the show because we're going to rag on two of his books right now, aren't we?
I mean, maybe he'll come on to
Like we
defend
have
them.
to.
Maybe he'll like trial by combat us, but he has to do it like verbally to us on the show. All right, Arl
Oh,
Stein, if you want to take us down, you have to come on the show to do it.
you have to fight us. But like we were saying earlier, like every chapter ends on a ridiculous scare that makes no sense. So in chapter one of this great novel, this great American novel, they're on a bus and they're going to the camp, and the bus stops and the bus driver turns around, and this is what it says. His head was enormous and pink, topped with a mop of wild, bright blue hair that stood straight up. He had long, pointed ears. His huge red eyes bulged from their dark sockets, bouncing in front of his snout like nose. Sharp white fangs drooped, dropped from his gaping mouth. A green liquid oozed over his heavy black lips. So it's like, oh man, this is the tale of the monstrous bus driver. But then it turns out he's just wearing a mask. That's how chapter two opens. Oh, it was a mask. It's like, well, what's the point of this?
Yeah,
It did not give me goosebumps.
I have a chapter because she goes to like call for help, literally on a payphone because it's 1993 or whatever, and she picks up the phone and someone grabs her from behind, and like I forget what they say, but it's just like, "What do you think you're doing?" And like it's really just one of her friends being like, "No, what are you doing?" Like, but like she's like, "I have to call for help. I have to alert the authorities." Picks up the phone, grab from behind. "What are you doing?" Next page. "It was Carrie. What are you doing?" Like I'm like,
Yeah,
bullshit.
just
Every chapter,
oh, that's
every
not
chapter
how
can't
this
be like
works.
this.
Oh man. So there's a couple other things that were just like I'm like this is too ridiculous. One of the things I think we talked about in our
Are you afraid of the
Are
dark?
You Afraid of the Dark episode? Yeah, the Are You Afraid of the Dark episode is just like adults are useless in Are You Afraid of the Dark. In Goosebumps, at least in this book, the adults are not useless. They are actively working against the children.
Same.
Right?
Okay, it's a 50-50 split here.
Hmm.
Half the adults are clearly working against the children, and half of them must be grossly incompetent.
Right.
And remind me
Okay, well,
about
you know
that
what?
when we talk about my book, because I want to get into it for my book.
Okay. Let's You know what? I feel like you should give your synopsis and we can kind of compare notes on the two books.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
that's
feel
the
like that
best way
would
to do this.
probably be the best way to do this.
Okay, sum it up. Billy goes to camp. It seems like it's a battle royale situation. His friends start disappearing. Turns out Billy's an alien. What's your
Okay.
story? What happens at Jelly Jam?
I read The Horror at Camp Jelly Jam, which is book 33 in the core books series for Goosebumps because
Later on,
there are so many Goosebumps series. It was published in 1995 and all right, so here's I did that compare contrast of what I remembered. So what I remembered this book being was two kids are riding they're on vacation with their parents and their parents' car is pulling the trailer they're camping in and they're
okay,
riding in the trailer, which is super illegal.
that's dangerous.
And it gets detached as they're going up into the Colorado Rockies on a steep decline, and they roll backwards away from their car, and their parents don't notice, and they crash off the mountain and go through the woods, and they are left behind. And when they finish crashing, they are at this camp. And that's what I remembered it being. And what actually happened in the first chapter is they harassed their parents so much in the car with their are we there yet bullshit that their parents let them ride in the back trailer, acknowledging that it's super illegal, and the mom's kind of against it, but then they open their mouths again and the mom's like, yeah, go back into the trailer. So I remembered the gist of it, but I did not pick up or remember either or that the kids literally were being so awful in the backseat that their parents were like, "Yeah, it's dangerous, but we can get an hour of quiet." Um,
No, I totally get that. As a parent, again,
which
a parent doing a parenting podcast, I
yeah,
totally get it.
when I was a kid, even I was like, "That's illegal. This is really irresponsible." Like 10-year-old me. Um, and now as an adult, I'm like, "Yeah, no, absolutely. I could see being like a 10 and 11-year-old need to get into the trailer for like an hour." Um, I also remember I read this on the way to my survivalist camp, because it was like an 8-hour car ride to get there. And I went to camp really disappointed. It did not get me hyped for camp. So they end up at this camp. And sorry, I've been all over tonight. They end up at this camp. So their names are Wendy and Elliot. Wendy's the older sister. She's the main character. Her little brother Elliot is with her. They end up crashed and they open the door and find that they are at King Jelly Jam's sports camp. And they're greeted by the head counselor Buddy, who is just like, well, there's a camp just over that hill. We'll, get you situated there until your parents can come and find you. Um, just hang out and play with the kids, get involved in some sports, do what you do. It seems totally normal. The brother is super competitive sports kid, so he's really into it. But Camp Jelly Jam is no ordinary sports camp.
Oh my
And
gosh, a shocker.
okay, so I'm gonna say, as they walk into the camp, there's like a little 7-year-old girl who peeks her head out from behind a tree and is like, "Run away! Don't go in!" And she's like, "What?" And then like the little girl's gone, and that's like page like 15. There is not a single spooky, scary, creepy event until page 64 out of 128. Literally halfway through the book is when the horror stuff remotely begins.
So it's negligent parents followed by mostly just regular camp stuff.
So the camp is weird. It's kind of got like a weird body snatchers vibe where all the kids have been convinced if you win a sporting event, you get a king coin. And if you get 6 king coins, you get to go on the winner's walk at the end of the day at night. And and the kids are really competitive, and the camp slogan is like, do your best or something like that. And so her brother gets really into it. She makes some friends. They get put up in dorms because their parents and the cops don't come for them. Um, and one of the girls that she's roommates with gets 6 coins, does the winner's walk, and then disappears. Her room's cleaned out, her bunk's cleaned out. It's like she was never there. And when they ask about her, they're like, "Oh, her, she's gone." And then
Okay,
like,
so there's a theme between the two camp books because there's disappearing kids in Welcome to Camp Nightmare
yeah,
also.
and then at like page 64, you know, spooky stuff starts to happen again. Um, they go out looking for their friend who never came back, and they see all the counselors like walking into the woods for some reason, and they run into that little 7-year-old girl again who's having like a meltdown. Like she saw something she wasn't supposed to, and they're gonna get her, and they lose track of her trying to get away from counselors. And then in the morning, when they ask about her, they deny that she ever existed. Basically, same theme. It's just like, who? We don't have a 7-year-old Amanda here. And eventually, she follows the counselors into the woods at night as more and more people she knows disappear after the winter's walk. And it finds out all the counselors have been brainwashed.
Oh no, that's bad.
And they are worshipping. She goes down into the basement to get away from them because she sneezes and they know she's there. She goes down into the basement and there's this rank smell, and she keeps going and going, and she finds this giant, horrible Lovecraftian horror thing living in the
Hmm.
basement, and all the kids have been taken have to like constantly rinse and wash it because it smells so bad that it can't stand its own stench. And if they don't do this, it'll eat them. And so she's got to figure out how to get rid of this thing and free the kids and escape. And you don't even meet the monster until page 104, 20 pages before the end of the book.
So the monster. Okay,
You know what I mean? Like
huh?
we don't even meet the titular monster or any monster until page 104. And the rest of the time you're
And
just
then
with
it's a
this.
Lovecraftian horror.
And then it's
Then
kind of like a Lovecraftian horror that has taken over these things' minds and forced people into servitude. So it is a camp story in setting only. Um, the kids aren't supposed to be there. They end up there, so they didn't go to camp. It's a sports camp, not like a wilderness camp. So like you don't get a lot of camp. It's a lot of her like running in races and playing softball and stuff. And then it's a very rushed, lackluster ending that doesn't really make sense. It's like he
hmm.
had the idea that he wanted to do a weird Lovecraftian monster, wrote the book, and was like, how do you kill it? And how you kill it is she convinces the kids to stop washing it for 5 minutes, and it dies from the smell of its own stench.
Okay,
And
good
I'm like,
twist.
how did the monster get down here? How did it exist before it enslaved these kids? If it smells so bad,
Okay,
what
so
is.
maybe it only started smelling bad after.
Maybe it crash landed or something and the environment's hostile to it.
Maybe.
I don't know. It just made.
What is the?
Yeah, I was not satisfied with the ending. It was not bad. It was not poorly written. She was an. She was a compelling, good storyteller. Following her was a fine story, but literally for like the first almost 100 pages, I was like, this is just a camp book. Like, this is a book about a girl who ended up at a camp she didn't want to go to. It's more of a coming of age tale.
Now, how long was she at this camp? Like, what's the time frame of this
They were
story?
there 3 or 4 days.
Oh my God, where were their parents? Did they
Yes,
ever
well,
explain
yes.
that?
So the parents and so the cops eventually show up after they kill this thing,
Hmm.
and they're like, "Oh, the cops! Finally! How did you figure it out?" They're like, "We didn't figure anything out. A horrible smell wafted down to the town, and we came up here to investigate what the source was. We didn't know there was anything happening here." And they were like, "Why didn't you find us?" They were like, "Well, we called the camp. They said there were no kids here." And I'm like, "Didn't you find the trailer went off a road and plowed through the woods? That had to leave a trail." And the trail and the abandoned trailer was at the edge of camp. Like,
So those parents were actively ditching their kids.
No, they had apparently
That's
been
the
looking
only
for them for three
explanation.
or 4 days, but not very hard.
No, they
Like,
were putting on airs. Oh, we're looking for them. Oh, we're trying so hard to be
yeah,
reunited
they
with
were
our kids. No, they're
detoxing.
liars.
They were absolutely detoxing for several days.
Oh no. So, in Are You Afraid of the Dark, parents and adults are incompetent. In Goosebumps, parents are actively working against you. I think that's the thesis
I
that I'm
think
going
that's the
with.
thesis, and all the counselors are too. And
Oh,
then
definitely. Any authority figure is actively working against you in R.L. Stein's world.
I, from my memory, yeah, that absolutely tracks actually from a lot of the books
That's a
that I
good
remember.
that's a good lesson because that's true, isn't it?
It is. It's very true. I didn't know R.L. Stein was seeding anarchy in the youth in the 90s, but
But
he
okay, so
was.
we need to think of this in terms of, are these books, would you recommend these books to kids now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Um,
because they were fun to read.
that's the thing. This wasn't a bad book. Like even the horror, like it was bad in that I was like waiting for the shoe to drop on the horror constantly,
Hmm.
and it just like in a Lovecraftian way doesn't like that type of story is about like things seem kind of weird here, and it's like that slow burn, slow reveal. But it's not bad. I never got bored with this girl.
Yeah, it's like I can complain all day long about the scares in the book or the just like the constant twists and turns. But even as a 30 some odd year old man, I was I was flipping those pages, not the actual pages, because again, I had a PDF, but I was eager to keep reading because I was like, oh, I gotta find out what happens next. Get to
Yeah,
the next one setting. I gotta find out what happens next. So, yeah, Goosebumps, even if the content is ludicrous, like it is straight up ludicrous. The sentiment of creating books that kids are going to sit down and just not want to put down, they're just going to want to read in one sitting. They work. They
it
just work. That's why there's so many of them.
it was a page turner, and I can't help but wonder if that's because there's a twist ending at the end of every chapter, and the chapters are only like 2 to 6 pages long, so you hit
Oh yeah,
that
they are short.
what is about to happen. You know what I mean? If you have a cliffhanger at the end of every chapter, and that's every 2 to 6 pages, of course it's a page turner. By the time you come down from the first thing, you're at another thing. And
Yeah, and I mean
eventually,
like
one of them's gonna be real horror.
no, I mean it gets there. I mean like I guess nothing in nothing in Welcome to Camp Nightmare ends up being real horror because it's all just
Truman Show
strange and
bullshit.
confusing. It's
Yeah.
more of it's more conspiracy. Like it feels like it's always conspiracy. Like you could tell there's something behind conspiracy. There's this conspiracy that's happening, and he's trying to unravel it, and then it turns out that he's an alien, but he knows he's an alien, or I mean,
Yeah,
he doesn't
it's
think that
it's
he's an
not
alien.
like that Are You Afraid of the Dark where the big reveal for the main character is that his sister's an alien. He knows he's an alien.
Right? He doesn't think he's from Earth. That's the twist. He's going to go to Earth and investigate Earth, which is not going to be at all like the summer camp. Um, but it's a page turner. Yeah, there's a twist ending at the end of every chapter. You got to find out what happens next. And it's 100 some odd pages. Like you're saying, yours was like 120 pages. I think
Yeah, it was
mine was
128 pages.
mine might have been like 135.
And
You could read these in one like sitting.
and they're small pages, and it's like a size 14 font. So
Oh yeah.
it's 128 pages. But if it was like an adult book with like that size 10 font or whatever, it would be like a 60-page novella.
Yeah, I mean they're classified as novellas. They're not considered novels.
Yeah,
Um so it's such a quick read. You can't get mad at it. I wanted to know what was happening on every page. So just the structure of it as something that's like this is designed solely to keep the kids guessing, and they're never going to guess the ending. Like the kids are never going to figure out the twist because the twist doesn't make any
It was
sense.
impossible to figure out the twist. You couldn't outsmart R.L. Stine because he didn't give you the context clues.
Yeah, there was no way to have known that Welcome to Camp Nightmare was a government training facility.
Now, one of the things I regret doing here is we had talked about doing Goosebumps before, and we said if we ever did Goosebumps, we would also have to watch the episode. And I regret not watching the episode because I've seen very little of the live action Goosebumps. In fact, one of the only episodes I have seen is Welcome to Camp Nightmare. And I was furious when I watched that episode because at the end, when it's revealed and they're like, it's called Earth, the camera pans
Oh,
up.
the tilt. You see the Earth in the sky.
And I was like, "What planet are you on? We don't have like it's at like the moon distance. This like in order for that to have worked, they would have literally needed to be on the moon."
Maybe there's an invisible planet the
Literally
same distance from Earth as the moon.
as a child, I literally was like, "How does that work?" Like even as a kid, I was like, "How does that work to you guys?"
Okay, fan theory. They live on the moon in the ancient past
And
when the
they
moon
colonized
supported
Earth.
life. Yeah, Billy is Adam. He is our primordial Adam. Another family sends a group of kids, and that their daughter is the primordial Eve. And Billy and Eve seeded Earth with life before the moon lost its atmosphere.
I'll
There
take
you
it.
go.
It's
Sure.
the only explanation.
It's the only one. Either that or they come from some backwards invisible planet, and that's just impossible. I mean, the science isn't there, Steve.
So, Goosebumps books, I believe, had two different endings, and I think we covered both of them. So, Goosebumps books, the ending was either, ooh, you didn't see that coming, or that classic, like, mom type of an ending
I think we talked about that in
with Are
the
You Afraid of the
Are You
Dark?
Afraid of the Dark?
True. Yeah, it's true though, because you got the like, ooh, space, and
It was space all along.
in my ending, Buddy the counselor shows up weeks later at their house. And he's no longer mind controlled. But the brother had just won his sixth coin when all this happened. And he shows up with the coin. And he says, like, you won it, so I just wanted to give it to you. And they're like, okay. I guess this is a weird memento from the horrifying traumatic situation we were in. Sure. And he leaves. And they're like, it doesn't matter. King Jelly Jam's dead. And they immediately start smelling a horrific smell like King Jelly Jam. And they're like, what's that? And the mom's just like, oh, I'm boiling some Brussels sprouts. And they're like, Mom! And like, that's it. That's the ending. They're like, oh no, is it back? No, it's just Brussels sprouts. And I was just like, this is it. This is, they either do that campy, did it come back? No, it's a mundane thing. Or they do the spooky.
Steve, oh my God. You're not reading between the lines enough.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the parents are already setting
Um,
them up to fail again?
no, the parents drop them off there as a sacrifice to Jelly Jam.
I mean, honestly, it's the only way that Buddy would be able to get their address.
So
They weren't
the
registered
parents,
camp kids. There's no way.
no, the parents drop them off there, and then when they figure out whatever they figure out, they kill the big Cthulhu monster.
So,
Now the parents who sacrifice them to the monster, they need to resurrect the monster. So they're not smelling Brussels sprouts. They're smelling the primordial monster that they are recreating in the kitchen, and they are going to be sacrificed to Jelly Jam.
okay, so what we need to do is we need to read every Goosebumps book.
Clearly, that's the rest of the podcast from now on.
And we need to come up with all of our obvious explanations for all of these weird things. And then we need to get Stephen King on the pod. Not Stephen King. I mean, we could get him to get his take. But then we get R.L. Stein on the
Just get Stephen
podcast.
King.
Just get
That's
Stephen
a big get.
King.
That's a big get.
He'll we'll get him because we're gonna be like, we're going after Stein. Are you in? And he just is like, I'm already here. And I just set up my Yeti microphone for him. And he's like, I've been waiting to get that bastard since the 90s.
After
And
that, we're getting Coons.
Coons. And then we're digging up the skeleton of Michael Crichton.
Poor dead Michael
Or
Crichton.
dead
He'll
Michael
never
Crichton.
see it coming.
You'll never know. And I'm sure by the time we've read every single Goosebumps book, we'll know how to actually reanimate Michael Crichton. So, and we've dissected these secrets. So, anyway, we come up with our fan theories of every single one of these books and be like, the only way this could happen is if the parents were in on it. And then we get R.L. Stein on, and we just bombard him book by book with, you
With
know,
all of our fan theories.
all of our the only way this could work is it'll be like Between Two Ferns, but like serious and about goosebumps, and we'll call it Between Two Goosebumps.
We're gonna do like a real hardcore Goosebumps fan theory podcast.
We should do like an investigative journalism podcast just about goosebumps books.
All right, that's our next spinoff after the food one.
I love it. R.L. Stein, you've heard it here. You have like 2 years to prepare.
Get ready, R.L. Stein.
Get that thesis ready.
But I think the important thing is we both would say that these books are still good
Yes.
for kids. Yeah,
I,
they're still good.
I did finish this and think I should revisit some of the books I liked because
I
I knew I
immediately
didn't.
wanted to read more
Yeah,
Goosebumps. Immediately.
I knew I didn't like this as a kid. So the chances of me suddenly liking it as an adult were pretty slim. Like usually it's the
That
other
was
way
very low.
around. Like if you liked it as a kid, you might not like it as an adult. But if you hated it as a kid, you have much less of a chance coming around to it unless you're going to like side with the parents. And as we've established, this isn't a medium where you can do that.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna spend every free moment from now on just reading old Goosebumps books.
I've been collecting them. I've got a couple dozen. I had, until I lost my computer hard drive recently, downloaded almost all of them from not only the core series, but the Choose Your Own Adventure series. And
Oh yeah.
I was really excited about that. And I've still got my hard copies, but definitely wish I had a lot of the others. Because there's like four distinct different Goosebumps series. There's like a Carnival of Horrors one.
Oh yeah, I saw that there's like a ton of the Carnival of Horrors or whatever this is.
There's a whole series that follows Slappy the Dummy from the Night of the Living Dummy books, where he's like the protagonist.
He became like the breakout Goosebumps character
He's the mascot.
somehow.
He's the official
Because he's
Goosebumps mascot.
and he's a big character in the movie that I didn't see with
Th-
them.
There's three movies now.
No, there's three? I knew there were two.
I feel like there's three. I
I know
could
Jack
be
Black is
wrong.
in the first one. I think in the second one he's only as Slappy. Because he's Jack Black plays R.L. Stein in the first movie. And then I think in the second movie he plays Slappy, but doesn't appear as R.L. Stein. I don't know that there's a third one, but I'll believe you if you say there
I
is.
could be just thinking that I may just be counting the TV show as you know, whatever.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
But yeah, there's a whole bunch of Goosebumps series. Check them out. So far, they still hold up. I'm sure we will revisit Goosebumps.
Oh, sure. Anytime we can't think of a better episode, we're going to revisit some Goosebumps.
Well, even if there's a topic you want to do, there's at least two Goosebumps books for it. Even just like a biome. Pick a biome. There's a Goosebumps book that takes place there.
Okay, so like if we want to do a
Swamps.
ski episode next winter.
Yeah, there's an Arctic episode. There's at least one Arctic episode.
Okay.
Minimum that I can remember, and I don't remember a lot.
I know there's a few time travel
There's a few time travel. There's ones that
Because
take
there's
place
like the
in
evil
with.
clock,
I mean, they have just in the core series 62 books.
and you could read them in a weekend. You could read the entire series in a weekend.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
honestly,
right.
you can. I knocked one of these out while watching my son in about 2 hours, I think.
Oh no, it was what I was doing at like 6 o'clock in the morning. My daughter would get up to watch cartoons, and she was watching her cartoons, and I was reading Goosebumps.
That's what I'm saying. I'm.
I am immature. I am not a good parent.
You could easily in an 8 hour. If you just like read books for like an 8 hour workday, you could knock out four of these.
Yeah, better
Easy.
than working.
Yeah.
I haven't read a book like for myself, I think I read one book probably in the last year, and it had been on my shelf for probably a year before then. And in full disclosure, it was because my friend wrote the book and I appear in it. That's what it took me in the last like 2 years to read a book. It took it being my friend's book and the fact that I appear within the pages of the book
I mean, it's one of the reasons
to
I
get me to
like
read it.
that we're doing this because I have not read a book voluntarily for myself since my son was born. I just haven't had the time or the energy. Like the few times I'm like, I could read something, I'm like, no, no, I can't. But I'm enjoying these because they're kids' books, so they're
They're
light
easy.
enough, they're easy enough. It's like just pulp crap that I can be like, yeah, and enjoy and absorb and not really get super invested in, you know. It's the perfect thing for right now, weirdly. But
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
I have a very I before my son was born, I was like I'm going to have all this time where like he's just like sleeping when he's like a baby and I can't like make a lot of noise, so I'll just get reading done and that was such a funny lie I told myself.
Oh yeah, that doesn't happen.
That did not happen. Well, my son was a very poor sleeper especially, but even if he was a good sleeper, I don't think I was going to be doing a lot of reading.
No. No, you have other things to do, like be awake and not tending to a child.
Yes. So, yeah, cool.
All right.
I
This is
is this time to move on to adult time? Do we want to
yeah,
do
adult
you have
time.
anything left to say on Goosebumps?
No, I would just say definitely give them a reread. They're not high literature, but you cannot put them down, and I think they are perfectly appropriate
I think
for your kids.
honestly they'd be good before you go to bed. Like if you're just looking to
Oh,
like
sure.
unwind, veg out, you don't want to like watch something, pick up a Goosebumps book. They are pretty low energy mentally. And they're page turners. So, put the kids to bed, make yourself a cup of tea or a cocktail, and just like reminisce on
Just read
a
some
Goosebumps
Goosebumps.
book. Why not?
Transport yourself to camp in the 1990s. Spooky camp in the 1990s.
Or, 20,000 BC before the moon colonized America.
Possible. It's hard to say.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. Well, we're gonna get R.L. Stein on the show, and
We'll make
we're
him
gonna
tell
really
us.
we're gonna drill into him about it. Um, oh, that's all I've got.
All right, what have you been doing for adult time?
You know what? I'm gonna change up what I was going to do for adult time, and I'm gonna throw this out there because I just ended up teasing it. I'm gonna recommend the book "In the Dream House" by Carmen Maria Machado, a good friend of mine. It is a very spooky, but also very adult book, not appropriate for children. That recounts. It's a memoir. It recounts an abusive relationship that she was in, but it's written in the style of many different types of weird fiction. It is, it's an incredible read. I appear in it a couple of times. Again, plug for myself, plug for my friend. Um, it's a hard read. It is a, well, I mean, hard read is the wrong way to say it, but it is a tough subject matter. told in an incredibly interesting and kind of impossible to describe way. There is a choose your own adventure section, so definitely very appropriate for this week.
Awesome. I watched in to tie into this, but also just because Netflix's Fear Street Part 1, 1994.
Looks so good.
Oh my God, it was so good. I don't want to overhype it, but it was so good. It was the first thing that I have watched in a long time that I wasn't playing on my phone or, reading something on my iPad or like working on my D&D campaign on the side or something. It had my attention.
Wow.
And I was really into the Fear Street books. After I kind of aged out of Goosebumps, I got really into the Fear Street books.
I
And
never got into them.
so I got into a lot of the Fear Street books, but there was actually something called the Fear Street Saga, and it was a trilogy. And then they also had the Fear Street Sagas, which was like period piece things that kind of tied in. But the Fear Street Saga was three books, and it started off in colonial times and it like the founding of this town and like a betrayal and witchcraft and all that stuff that left like a stain on the town, and then each book jumped like through time up until modern times dealing with the curse from the first book. And that is roughly the template they're using for these movies, except
Mm.
in, I believe in the original Fear Street saga, you start in colonial times and end in modern times. In this one, you start in 1994, and then part 2 is 1974, and part 3 is 1666. And so, um, it's again, it's not fully based on it, but as someone who read it, I saw a lot of Easter eggs, and I see a lot of character names where I'm like, are they going down that path or is that like an homage? And I'm very interested to see where it goes. The characters are all a lot of fun. I started off being like eye rolling 99% of them. Like, oh my God, this is gonna be a tough one. But by the end, I loved them all so much that when it got to like, because it's like a slasher flick type of a thing, like when it got to the point where they're gonna start dying, it was just like, no, no, not my precious boy, don't you dare! Like it's one of those where you're just like, and you get really,
I
really
need this
attached to
to
the
end so I can
characters.
believe that you live.
Yeah, like I know there's only 10 minutes left in this movie, and that is making this agonizing because I need you to get through this 10 minutes. So it's only going to be worse in the next one because it's continuing the story from 1994 while flashing back to
Flashing back.
1974. So these characters can still be killed off. So like
Mm.
even the survivors theoretically aren't safe. And I was so angry when I got to that part where it was like continued next week, and I was like, "What? No, they're safe. Just jump back to 1974." And these ones are safe. I got really invested. My wife was even like, I did not see myself becoming ride or die for these children, but here we are. We finished it around 10 p.m. last night, and that's way past our bedtime. And we were legitimately like, part two is out. Do we want to watch part two right now and just go to bed like at 12:30 in the morning? And it was, I don't, again, I hate overhyping things, but it was good enough that I almost canceled tonight's recording and went and watched part two.
I wouldn't have blamed you.
I really enjoy it. If you liked the Fear Street books, there's a lot of fun Easter eggs. If you never read them, it's still really good, and it pulls from a lot of 90s horror. There's a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street references, Scream references. You can just see where they pulled from all of this stuff.
It hurts so much that if you do something in the 90s, it's like a real period piece.
It is a full fun period piece.
The period piece, but I remember the 90s. I was around in the 90s, and then I was like, oh yeah, the 90s were 30 years ago.
Yep. Yeah,
Ugh,
1994 was, yeah, it was 20 like 7 years ago.
27 years ago.
Yep. Yeah,
Well, good for the 90s.
these are all high school kids. I was 9. I was reading Goosebumps books.
We were reading Goosebumps books in 1994, like a good kid should.
Yeah, no, it is very fun. The kids do get the case of the stupids at the end, as per any teen horror
Any teen book,
slasher.
yeah, no.
Yeah, and my frustration with it was like it would have been really easy to explain away the stupids with just like a quick camera shot or two. You know what I mean? Like one line
Hmm.
of dialogue to be like, why are you doing this? Like, there's a million explanations for why you're doing this, but no one's ever said it, so now it just seems like a dumb idea. Um, so, I had very little problem with it. I did enjoy it a lot. You do fall in love with the characters. I can't recommend it enough. Part 2 looks phenomenal. There's a trailer at the end of part 1, and I heard part 2 like goes like just absolutely nuts, like just goes to the wall. And I was just like, really? Like, how big could it go? And just the trailer for part 2, I was like, oh my god, the trailer went big. I can only imagine the episode, so I'm very excited to watch it. Highly recommend it if you're looking for just some light horror fun.
All right. Well, I'm gonna check that out this weekend, I think.
Yeah, definitely do. It's just a fun time. They do fun with the period piece. They do fun just with the characters. It's all around nice. Oh, the
All right, some real
soundtrack.
adult time.
The soundtrack is all music that was out in 1994. It's such a good soundtrack. I hadn't thought of some of these bands in so long, Sam. I gotta go download this soundtrack.
Like who? Now you gotta tell me who was on it.
Oh my god, who isn't? It's got, and it jumps around depending on the character you with. So like the main character's younger brother is really into like metal and industrial, so there's like uh not there's like Machine Head, there is Rob Zombie. You've got like all of that stuff. You've got Nine Inch Nails, and then you've got just like sugar pop from that era. You've got rock and roll from that era. You've got like depending on which character you're with changes up the genre of music from that year, which is very fun. It's just
Nice.
it's just good. Like it was just like a good, and again, I didn't remember most of those songs even existed, so I'm having trouble recalling them now that I'm out of the moment. But so many times my wife and I were like, we need to get this soundtrack, or holy crap, I haven't heard this song in forever. I think I used to own this CD. I got to see if I still own like that type of stuff.
All right. Well, have fun digging through your old CD cases.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a Spotify that has the entire playlist, so I think I might just run through that.
Well, that's easy enough. That's much easier than what I said.
Go down that rabbit hole and then maybe re-look up some of those old bands. All right. So, I
All
mean,
right.
I think that's it for this week.
Okay, then I guess we'll catch everybody next week. Be sure to follow us on the social medias. We are RT Spirits Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. So if you want to tell us about your favorite Goosebumps books, be sure to tell us in the comments.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Steve.
I'm Sam. I'm
And
doing this voice now.
keep it spooky and don't get serial killed on any hiking trails.
Don't even go hiking. Definitely don't camp.
Bye.
Bye.